All right. Welcome back to Totally Baseless, where we go outside the lines and inside the minds of guys that have spent their lives around all walks of baseball. I'm Chris Vitali. I'm your host, and I am joined today by a guy who pitched between 1995 and 2005 in the majors, went about 5 teams, and you might know him best as part of Generation K with the New York Mets, drafted in 1991. Bill Pulsipher is with us. Bill, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Chris. Thank you. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right, man. Doing all right. I'm actually doing a little better than some of these pitchers are. I just noticed today, Kendall Graveman from the Houston Astros is going to miss all of 2024. So he's joining some names like Ohtani, Michael Fulmer, Shane McClanahan. These guys are going to be all on the shelf for 2024. So I want to get into a little bit about pitching injuries. Last year, there was a total $594.3 million tied up in salary that just did not pitch last year. So, I mean, it's a decent amount of money. You can buy, you can buy some tacos with that. But, seriously. But, I wanted to ask you, what you think might be the root cause of all of these injuries. I mean, is it mechanics? Is it guys overthrowing? Just in your mind, what do you think is causing just this uptick in shoulders and blown out elbows?
Well, I think it all really begins and stems with the fact that throwing is just an unnatural motion to begin with. So you already got that going against you as somebody that's a pitcher. You throw the hill in, and then the hill is obviously adding extra stress and strain. But then with the becoming so more prevalent nowadays, I think that a lot of the techniques that are being taught nowadays to add the velocity is putting the guys' arms and their bodies in susceptible positioning to add even more stress. I don't think that I know I've seen some, and I don't know the exact number, so you can't quote me on it completely, but the amount of stress that the ulnar collateral ligament is humanly possible to take before it snaps is like 80 pounds of pressure, and they're saying that at 95 miles an hour, it's like 100 something pounds of pressure to the and again. And not the exact numbers, but something like that. So with each pitch, these guys are really going up above and beyond what the ligament is supposed to do anyway. Obviously, everything being so focused now on throwing every pitch, full potential, full max power pitches, I think that has a lot to do with it. In my day and in days before me, there was, you could go 7, 8, 9 in the lineup, and you can kind of throw it in there, obviously not just throwing batting practice, but let those guys hit the ball as far as they could. And, it'd be a fly ball to center field or a fly ball to the warning track. And that's just not the case anymore. So I think that so many pitches being max effort all the time and some of the techniques that the guys are using, I think that has something to do with it. There's
been a lot made of this. Like you just said, max effort. Even at Ball 9, we've written about that, and I think we've spoken about it on another show. But now, is the bubble going to burst? Is there going to be a point where maybe they try kind of, emphasizing command over just straight velo? I mean, like Maddox, I know he was one of a kind, but what did he sit at, 92, 93? So
not even in his, in his really, really prime time, he was, in the 88, 89 range. Early on, he was 92, 93. And then he kind of settled in at 87, 88, 89 and just pitched his balls off. I don't think that can ever happen again, especially with the automated umpire eventually coming in. He was getting the ball, and obviously he was throwing it there on purpose over and over and again, but he was, getting the ball 5 inches off the plate, whatever, 3, 4, 5 inches off the plate, but he could consistently throw it there, and the umpires would call it a strike. I would like to think that it could make a turnaround, but man, I just don't see how that slowing the ball down to give the hitter more time to react. I think that's why the things have kind of gone in this direction, is because it just makes it that much harder to hit the damn ball because you just don't have the freaking time to see it, or it's almost like they say it's almost humanly impossible to hit 100-mile-an-hour fastball. So I think that's why they aim for that kind of stuff. Me as a guy that never threw that hard would obviously love to say that it's going to come back around again. And I do believe the 2-seam fastball will come back around again, because the launch angle swing will kind of go away a little bit as they start to realize that pitchers are trying to expose the hitters with high fastballs up in the strike zone. So I think eventually the swing might level back out again, and then that will bring the 2-seamer and the changeup back into into play a little bit more. But I just don't see them ever going back around to saying, you know what, let's take a little bit off. And I don't know, because in order to get recruited, to get drafted, to get seen, you're going to have to light up that radar gun. And unfortunately, that's just the way it is. I've heard where scouting directors will go back to their, or scouts will go back to their scouting director and say, man, I got this guy, he throws 90, 91, and he really knows how to pitch, and he moves the ball around, and they'll laugh at him. Like, why are you even bringing this guy into the office? Probably bringing his name up. So I'd like to say yes, but I'm not convinced that it will come back around.
I can understand that for sure. I mean, would you be, and now this is just something I've heard, and I'm surprised they haven't tried it in the Atlantic League or whatever yet, because that seems to be the Frankenstein proving grounds for some of Manfred's new things. I mean, would you be adverse to seeing them lower the mound like they did after 1968?
I don't know. I mean, as a pitcher, we love standing up on that big old hill, and obviously back before things were really, really scrutinized, there were certain stadiums that, you knew that this stadium had a slightly, like I always remember Veterans Stadium. I always felt like that mound was higher. They always said that Dodger Stadium was higher because the infield was so crowned that they kind of worked the height of the mound. It looked like it was a certain height, but it was actually higher because of the crown of the infield. I mean, I think that might have something to do to help with injuries. I think taking some of the slope off of the mound and throwing more off on flat ground. I don't know, man. It's tough, though, because when you're standing way up on top of that hill and home plate feels real close to you, it feels kind of comforting when you're pitching. But I do think that it might have something that could possibly help mitigate the injuries a little bit and take some of the stress and torque off of the shoulder and elbow.
See, I can see that. I don't really know if I'm in favor of it.
Right.
I mean, they already talked about moving the mound back, a foot,
which is ridiculous.
I don't know how I feel about that. That's.
I don't think that's going to help injuries. I think that guys are
it'll make it worse.
Yeah, I think it would make it worse. And it would definitely change the game. There's no reason to change the dimensions of the infield. I don't believe. I think that the game has evolved over years and years and years and years and years. You got to remember, in the late 1800s, there was a pitching box, and the pitchers threw underhand, and the catcher stood up. So the game has always evolved, but the mound's been at 60 feet 6 inches for a long time. I think it might be interesting to think about possibly lowering the mound a little bit. But I tell you what, I go down to fantasy camp every year, and I look out on the mounds out at St. Lucie on the minor league fields, and I remember, man, those mounds used to be huge, and they just seem like they're really, really flat now. And I guess if you come up through the mounds being a lower height, and then eventually it might just become normal, I just think it would seem so drastic and so different to lower the mound. I mean, I would love to have seen what it looked like when Bob Gibson had a 1.1 ERA, and they were way up on those hills. That must have been fun.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, and you had Louis T out the same year with like a 1.68, and
right.
He actually didn't even win the Cy Young that year, which is crazy. What was it, Darren McClellan that won the 30 games? I mean, that's nuts to me. That's insane.
Can you imagine? I had a 1.6 and I didn't win the award.
It's unbelievable. I mean, hey, you're the pitcher, man. So yeah, that's really, really crazy. So I mean, what do you think teams can do, just from a team standpoint? Without changing rules, without lowering the mound, what can a team do to better protect their investments? Like I said, I mean, they're at close to $600 million that they were paying for guys to.
Well, I think maybe as organizations, they look at emphasizing the changeup a little bit more, using more off-speed pitches, not necessarily breaking balls, maybe introducing the two-seamer again. Like I said, it might be a few years away, simply because the launch angle swing was created to combat the guys that were throwing sinker balls down in the zone. And in my day, everything was throw the ball down and away, and then keep them honest in. And I think that's maybe what it's going to be. Start to emphasize changeups and two-seam fastballs again a little bit more, and not throwing every pitch at max level and trying to always pitch at the top of the zone. Maybe we start to try to mix it up a little bit, where we show them up to get back down, or we show them down to get back up. I just think that with the amount of torque and the amount of velocity that these guys are throwing at nowadays, I feel like it's just inevitable. I think it obviously starts early on too, with travel ball and all that. So it's just like a recipe for disaster, it seems. But maybe it's the introduction of the two-seamer and the changeup a little bit more into the game than it's been used over the last let's say 5 or 8 years.
So, I mean, now we're seeing just sweepers left and right. I mean, do you think that trend is going to die down? And maybe, like you said, I mean, if these guys are going for a launch angle swing, wouldn't you just keep throwing it, just keep elevating a fastball at them? Yeah. I mean, these guys, everybody trying to get cute and, with the sweeper, you don't get movement on it, you're going to get demolished.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's why the fastball has tended to tick up in the velocity and up in the strike zone. And like I said earlier, I really do believe, and baseball has always kind of evolved, in the way that the game was played when I first came in was not how the game was played. Relatively speaking, and to your average fan, they might not really notice the difference. But if you've been around the game and in the inside, and you can kind of see and you hear the stories of, well, when we used to do this, this, and the other thing, I think that it will eventually, because like we look at some of the numbers, I think it was 2 years ago that they had the lowest batting average ever in the history of Major League Baseball. I think that eventually they're going to start leveling the swing out again to try to combat against the high fastball, which will then in turn the pitchers into, well, like I said, throwing more changeups, throwing more two-seam fastballs, getting guys to try to, hit the top of the baseball again. So I think it's just we're in a transition period, maybe a little bit, and I think that maybe that's where it goes back around. But you're still going to see guys trying to throw 99-mile-an-hour sinkers. That's the thing about velocity is it is still kind of king. And the less time you can give a hitter to hit the ball, obviously, the harder it is to hit the damn thing.
That's absolutely. I mean, it's actually always funny to me when you see a guy who's coming in throwing 100, 101, and their change is sitting at like 94. That always kills me.
That's crazy.
So it's a 94-mile-an-hour change. That's nuts.
That makes an old guy like me really feel bad about myself. That these guys are throwing 94-mile-an-hour changeups. I do believe the guns are a little bit different. But and they read the ball at a different place. But when we were throwing 94 miles an hour back in the 90s, you were bringing it. There was only that rare guy, Randy Johnson that was at 97, 98 and hitting 99, or Billy Wagner. And then I remember like when Bobby Jenks would come in, or Billy Wagner would come in back in those times, and they're throwing 99, 100, touching 101, and the hitters just had absolutely zero chance. Then you see a guy like Gratterall. Oh yeah. With the Dodgers, who throws 100 miles an hour, and he can't get a swing and a miss on his fastball. So it's, I don't know how much of it is the guns or how much of it is, hitters just becoming accustomed to the speed because more guys are throwing that hard. But 94 miles an hour on the changeup is, man, that makes me feel weak.
It's ridiculous, to be honest. I mean, it's not often you see that, but I mean, I've seen a couple of relievers where I'm like, oh my God, how the hell that's a change? That's just nuts to me. Yeah. But, I mean, and like I said, I don't know if this is, if that's adding to injuries or what, just the constant, you just chasing the velo.
I think it has to.
Yeah. I mean, right. It would seem that is a major culprit.
I don't think the organizations maybe are concerned about it so much as they know that there's going to be another group of guys coming up throwing 97, 98, 99 miles an hour. I think it's always kind of been like that way in a way. I mean, obviously you don't want your star players to be going down, but the insurance covers this money. These guys have insurance. These guys are hundreds of millionaires, if not billionaires, owning this team, and they pay their insurance. So obviously you want your best guys out there, but they know there's going to be another crew of guys that are training to throw 99 and 100 miles an hour. And I think that, the amount of people that threw that hard or threw whatever, exponentially harder than your local guys in your high school, those guys are still there. They're just training at an earlier age to throw hard. So more guys throw hard. I don't think the number of players in your local little league or your local Babe Ruth league or travel ball are any bigger or higher than they are when it comes to talent to be major league players. I just think that they train earlier and they train velocity.
And you also raise a good point where it's kind of like, it's almost like some of these organizations are growing these guys on trees where somebody can go down for the year, but immediately somebody comes up that's still throwing 100. So you're right.
And
there.
Yeah. And the science too, with injuries. And I feel like they might feel, 12, it used to be 18 months, you're back from Tommy John. Now it seems like it's kind of whittled its way down to about a year. So maybe they feel like, you know what's 12 months? We got another guy that can come in. We'll give him an opportunity. He's going to be throwing that hard too. We'll just keep running him out like a conveyor belt, knowing that, okay, in 12 months, he'll be back. I mean, obviously there are the guys that don't make it back. And for every guy that you hear in the big leagues that has Tommy John and doesn't make it back, there's going to be at least one in the minor leagues that has Tommy John and never makes it back either, So it just seems like, in my day, they said it was an 85% success rate. I had Tommy John. I did make it back to the big leagues. I never felt, I was one of those unlucky guys that never felt like I quite threw the same that I did. But I just feel like and that was in 96 into 97. I think that in 2024, the science and the surgery is even that much better. You look at, and I know Brock Purdy didn't have, and this is football, but he didn't have Tommy John. But now they're doing that, and I think this is what Shohei did, where they have a brace now, where they're actually bracing the ligament back together, as opposed to using your palmaris longus, which is the tendon in your wrist, to sew your elbow back together. I just think that the techniques are better, so they figure, what the hell, the guy will be back soon enough. He'll be all right, and he'll throw just as good.
Okay, so maybe the organization is thinking that you're like, oh, okay, it's only 12 months, but I mean, as a player, that's got to be excruciating. I mean, that really, I mean, and this is something I never really hear talked about, especially from former players. It's, if you're on a rehab assignment for a year, I mean, that's okay. Maybe it doesn't affect the organization that badly, but you personally, that's got to be hell trying to get back from something like that. Because I mean, you've worked so hard to get to this point.
Right.
Where all of a sudden now it's like you're starting over. I mean, it's almost like, you get in a car accident and you have to learn to walk again.
Right.
So, I mean, what's your mindset when you are on that side of things, when you know you have a long rehab ahead of you?
Well, usually
do you just get tunnel vision and just really put everything you have into it?
Seriously. You hit it right on the head. And I know that was the way I was. It was every day. And this is what I think kind of, and we'll get into this in a little bit, kind of hurt me on my way out of, on my way out, was just the obsession with, I mean, as professional athletes, we're usually kind of obsessed about certain things as it is anyway, whether it be our health or our training. And I think when you're injured and you have nothing else to do because you're not playing, it's that much more of just totally focused, all waking hours, thinking about getting better. What can I do today? What else can I do to try to heal the process? You're constantly doing different therapies, icing, heat, massage, all of your workouts that you need to do. It's just a complete focus on, I want to be back and I want to beat that time. And I'll go back to football again. We'll use Aaron Rodgers this year. He blows his Achilles out, and right away he's like, I'll be playing in week 8. And that's kind of the mentality that you have, is like, I'm different and I'm going to be special and I'm going to beat this, and I'm going to take every energy that I have and just focus it on getting myself better. And that's exactly what I did. I worked out like a maniac. It was nonstop, and that's all. I remember laying on the ground and just flipping the ball up in the air and trying to visualize pitches, and just doing my wrist when I couldn't use my elbow, and just trying to feel the ball come out of my hand. And just it becomes an obsession, even more, because you don't have kind of the release of the actual games, where you're out there playing. It's just like, it's all just preparation. And I don't know whether it was a good thing or a bad thing for me, but in 96, I traveled with the Mets the whole year. So I was, until Dallas Green got fired and they brought Bobby in, and that's when they sent me down to Florida, but that was in the last month of the season. But I was in the dugout every single night watching the games, and still being around the game and being around the team. And that makes it even that much harder, because you want to be out there so bad. But it's definitely becomes an obsession, and you definitely want to beat that time clock that they put on you. If they say 12 months, you're like, okay, I can do it at 9. So it becomes an obsession.
Sure. And I mean, and you answered my question, actually. I was going to ask you if being in a dugout and traveling with the team made it easier or harder on you.
Yeah, I don't know.
Obviously you want to be out there, but I mean, but does being that close to the game and not being down at some rehab facility in Port St. Lucie,
right?
I mean, I could see that going either way.
Yeah. And I only did it once, so I don't have an opportunity to say I did it the other way. But hindsight's 2020. I think maybe being around the team was probably not the best thing. But at the time when I came up, the Mets were kind of hoping to get into that transition of going from a bad team to a good team. And I was thought of as one of the integral parts going forward. So they felt like they wanted me around the ball club because I was going to be back the following year. And then everything kind of changed with change of manager and change of general manager. So, but I think back sometimes and wonder what it would have been like for me to be, because I had a house in St. Lucie at the time, what it would have been like to be at home and not watching the games on a nightly basis. And just focusing on rehab. But again, like I said, my rehab focus was intense. And I'm sure all guys, you don't become a professional athlete because you're not intense. And you're intense, and it can become even more when you get it taken away from you.
I know last year you were at Citi Field, you threw out a first pitch, you did an interview with Steve Gelbs in the middle of the game. Yeah. And, you were an early advocate for mental health and in sports. I mean, we all know the major sports leagues are behind in everything. So, you coming out and talking about it and the impact that the rehab process and everything had on you, I think was pretty important. Can you talk about that a little bit? Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely, I'm 50 now, so I've had so many years to look back over everything that has happened throughout my life and my career. And when I came back from Tommy John and started throwing, I was doing great, doing really well. Went into spring training in 97, had a great spring training. And then I got told, hey man, you're going to start the season on a rehab assignment. And something just totally snapped. I thought, wait a minute, because I grew up in a time where you didn't lose your job due to injury. And I felt like I had a job, and it was a starting pitcher with the New York Mets. And then I got injured, and then I got healthy. So I felt that I should have had my job back. And then if I didn't perform, then you send me down. But, because I was still only 23 years old, that they decided, well, you didn't pitch for a year, you got to go pitch a little bit. And something just completely snapped, and, looking back at 50 and knowing my family history and that anxiety and depression and alcoholism and these types of things ran in my family a little bit, things that I didn't know about. It rose its ugly head, and I went from being able to feel like the most comfortable place on the planet for me, which was standing on top of a mound 60 feet, 6 inches away from home plate, quickly became the most uncomfortable place. And it was devastating. I mean, just completely devastating, and talking about a person that obsessed anyway, you just obsessed for a year about getting healthy. And now here you are up on the hill and you can't do what you've always been able to do. And you have no understanding as to why. It was extremely difficult. And I don't wish it on anybody, the anxiety, but I do wish everybody on the planet could feel it. So at least you can understand how all encompassing and how powerful it really can be, where you can take somebody who was an elite athlete, a 1%, less than 1% person, professional athlete, and where they just cannot perform at all. And the reason that I felt like I had to say something was because I had to let people know what was going on, because we're thought of as athletes as these steel traps and these, almost superhuman, if you will. And that's not me being braggadocious. That's just what I felt about athletes as I was a kid, when I was a kid growing up. So I felt like I needed to let people know what in the world was going on with me, that I felt like this is a fish out of water completely. So, I was one of the first guys, obviously they called it Steve Blass disease prior to me, where Steve Blass went from being, I believe, a 20-game winner to not being able to hit the broadside of a barn. And then you look at Rick Ankiel, who came a little bit after me. It's this kind of the same type of thing. And you think that this could never happen to guys, but it happens, and it happens more than you think. And I think of how many guys that possibly have the potential as minor leaguers, but just, this guy can never throw strikes. This guy can't throw strikes. Well, there might be something going on that we don't, that doesn't get talked about. And I think that a lot of times that's it, just the anxiety, which leads to depression because you can't do what you love and you're not doing well at what you love. So it was tough. And I wanted to say something. Part of it was me wanting to let people know what in the world was going on with me. And then part of it was also, and it turned into over the years, was letting people know that this is, I'm not going to say normal because it's not everybody, but this is a normal occurrence. And there's ways to combat it. And there's ways to go about to helping yourself out, to help you get yourself back to the person and the athlete that you are and can be.
Well, I mean, I think it's really important that you did it. I think it's great because, I mean, because younger athletes too now they feel a little more open to discussing it. And it seems like before, like you said, Steve Blast disease, or it's just so easy to chalk something like that up to the yips, and that's it, but you never really get.
Well, the yips is the anxiety. It's an anxiety thing. You exactly. Have to call it nervous, call it the yips, call it butterflies, call it whatever you want. But when it doesn't subside, that's
something else going on.
Right.
Yeah, totally agree. However, since we are coming up on a half hour, Bill.
Yes.
We're going to change speeds a little bit, and we're going to we're going to start the pitch clock, and we're going to do a little rapid fire questionnaire, if you will. I'm going to name some cities that you played in, and I would just like to know, first thing that you think of, best place to go for a post-game meal. All right, here we go.
All right.
New York.
Frankie and Johnny's The Pine. That's an Italian restaurant in Brooklyn. And they did a great job of bringing players in and giving us free meals. And we made sure that we tipped highly because they treated us very, very well. But that was always a treat.
Oh, I've been there. It's a hell of a choice. How about Milwaukee?
The stuffed pork chop at Frankie and Johnny's. But Milwaukee.
Oh,
I couldn't even tell you, to be honest with you. I mean, obviously, for me, Milwaukee, you know what I really, really looked forward to? And this is going to sound really silly. And it was a pregame meal, actually. It was usually Sundays. And it was brats underneath the stadium, because County Stadium was terrible. It was never nice, not even the day they opened it. But eating brats, while listening to Bob Uecker tell stories underneath the stadium prior to the game on Sundays was one of my favorite food things to do in Milwaukee. 2 brats and listen to Bob Uecker tell stories.
Does it get any better than that? I mean, that's baseball heaven to me.
It really is. I don't think it gets better than that.
That's got to be unbelievable.
It's awesome. I look back at that time as some of the greatest times in my baseball career, in my life. I mean, having Bob Uecker tell stories while I eat beer brats.
Yeah, you can't. That's hard. That's tough to beat. That's really tough to beat. All right, let's go Boston.
Boston.
Last.
I don't even know. To be honest with you, because it's more like I feel like you eat out more on the road than you do at home, because at home I stayed in Peabody, and don't you dare say Peabody, because those are fighting words. But should I say beer and chicken in the clubhouse as well? Because I think that was a sticking point in Boston, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yes. Very Wade Boggs of you.
There was chicken tenders every single day in the clubhouse after batting.
Was it really?
Yeah, every single day.
Was it really? That was part of the spread? They just kept the fried chicken thing going?
It was. I think it was a carryover. Yes.
Let's go south side of Chicago.
Gino's East Pizza. Definitely.
Really? Was the deep dish?
The deep dish, yeah. That's like one of the most popular.
There's like a love-hate.
I love it. I absolutely love it. But I live in Long Island. I love New York style pizza, but I'm also I love food. So I don't discriminate, man. I actually, and it's been a long time, but I've actually had pineapple on a pizza as well. I think we might have went over this, but Gino's East Pizza was great. I also had another place, and I can't remember what the heck the name was, but it was on Park. And I just looked it up the other day because somebody else had asked me this question, but there was another Italian spot that me and my wife used to go to, Michelle. And we would go because she'd love to come to Chicago because Chicago's a beautiful city. And we would hit there, but it was definitely Gino's East. I do remember Gino's East with Billy Corgan, which was pretty damn cool.
Billy Corgan, really?
Yeah, we used to hang back in the day, which was cool. My wife still my wife still actually keeps in contact a little bit through Instagram and that with him. But
that's awesome.
Yep. Going out to meals with Corgan at Gino's East was always cool.
That I would imagine. That's maybe a close second to the Bob Uecker and bratwurst thing. So I'm going to throw a curveball at you. Pueblo.
All right. Mole poblano, obviously, which is known there, which is the dark brown sauce, which is it's actually made with chocolate.
Chocolate in it.
Over chicken. Tacos Camperos, which is like a mix. The whole mix. They give you a plate. man, it's so different than what you think, like obviously Taco Bell or even going to a Mexican restaurant in the States. It's just completely different, completely different. You have they bring you out a plate that's just all the meats and the peppers and and then just a side of tortillas. They really don't even make a taco. It's in the way I learned how to do it, and the Oaxaca cheese, which is like the string cheese that you pull off.
Oh,
man,
it's good stuff. Yeah.
Awesome stuff. They don't even make tacos. It's you rip a piece of your tortilla, you give your little bite of meat, your little bite of cheese, and then you take your bite, and then you rip another piece. It's not like we think of when we do tacos, Taco Tuesday or whatever, where I make a taco. That's not necessarily the thing. Obviously, road tacos at the taco stands is something a little more similar. And if you're out west, so you have nice taquerias and that. But definitely mole poblano, which is their traditional dish.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's all good stuff. And yeah, I mean, I live 2 hours from Mexico, so I get lucky on the
what's up.
For sure.
Yeah, you know what's up.
Oh God, yeah. And last but not least, let's throw another curveball at you. How about Yucatan?
They were known. Yucatan was known for their chorizo, which is we all know
my favorite.
Yeah, really, really good. And then a fried cheese that they would do also with that. I mean, I can't name a restaurant, obviously, but definitely, you got to have the fried cheese and the chorizo. And then I had this one little chicken shack, and it was an open air little place where they grilled the chickens or rotisserie chickens over an open flame. And it was on the way to the yard, and I would stop and I would grab one there. And again, they would have a little baggie of onions, a little baggie of like jalapenos, pickled onions, pickled jalapenos, and then like a little baggie of guac.
All that, yeah.
It's like it was in a plastic bag, and what you would do is with the guacamole, you would bite a little hole in the bag and you would squirt it out on your tortilla and on your chicken, and you'd make your little chicken tacos on the way. Really simple food, but just you cannot beat it. Just incredibly good.
I mean, all right. Well, now I'm hungry, so I think I'm going to go have some lunch. But that is pretty much that, ladies and gentlemen. I really appreciate you coming on, Bill, and we will do this again for sure. I am Chris Vitali. That's Bill Pulsipher. This has been Totally Baseless. Adios, muchachos.